Hey guys, this is Blue Forest. I hope you're doing well. So I've gotten some questions from players about how to sort of deal with Kabam and steps that you might need to take when you have issues. And so I wanted to do a video where I go over some of the most common issues in the game. I want to give you some tips as to what to do when you have those issues, as well as an overview and a very blunt and honest assessment of how Kabam operates as a company. Because I think these are very important things to bear in mind, especially if you're at a point in the game where you're choosing whether to really invest in it or not. Because this is a very time-consuming game. It requires a lot of grinding if you want to do well. You're often playing for years to make really significant progress. It's like a part-time job. And so you need to be mindful of what Kabam is actually like and the kinds of problems you're going to face. And so I want to go over gameplay issues, technical issues, performance-based issues, Discord, Kabam's communication, their customer service, their history of censorship, as well as dealing with in-game purchases for money and their content or lack thereof of content in this game. And one thing you find when you play this game for even a fairly brief period of time is that there are a lot of gameplay and performance related issues. Now, this is a mobile game. There are going to be technical issues in any game like this, but I will say that Kabam games, and definitely TFTF, tend to have a lot of these kinds of issues, and they can be immensely frustrating. So I'm talking about things like freezing, being stuck on menus or games, crashing, which can be very frustrating because it can result in penalties to you, particularly in game modes like AMs, which is ridiculous, but the players do tend to be penalized if you lose a connection or your game crashes. Air punches, big problem. Lag, both in gameplay and in the menu lag, as well as the opponents, the bots that you're fighting, doing things that a human simply couldn't do and doing things that they should not be able to do. Those are just some of the most widespread issues in the game, and you have to be aware of them. I want to highlight a couple of them. One, of course, is the menu lag. This has been going on for over a year, has not been fixed. And so if I were to open up a menu right now, if I wanted to look at my Sparks, if I scroll through right now, it's fine because I just opened up the game. But if I were to play for 10 or 15 minutes and go back into that same menu, it would become extremely sluggish, which is just incredibly irritating and a waste. Unfortunately, however, that issue has not been fixed, and we've been given no indication as to whether it will be fixed or whether it even can be fixed. The other, probably most widespread gameplay issue that you will come across is air punching, because this happens all the time. And there are two general types of air punching. There is whiffing, where you're basically right next to the opponent, and when you swing to hit, you don't actually make contact. Even when the opponent is not dodging or evading, you should make contact, but you don't. And I would say the most common form of air punching is what you might call air dashing. And this is where your bot simply will not dash at the opponent when you want it to. It will either just stand in the corner and swing its arms around like an idiot, or it will dash maybe halfway. It will go part way across the arena and then just stop, almost like your bot is tripping over itself. This is a huge problem because when that happens, the opponent, the vast majority of the time, will see that you're vulnerable and will choose to attack, in which case it can do a lot of damage to you. And if you're in a difficult fight in AMs or something like that, the opponent can even kill you. And unfortunately, air punching is extremely widespread. It happens every day. Some days it's better than other days, but it does happen very frequently. Sometimes it happens multiple times in a fight. And even if you're a really good player, that does unfortunately mean that you're going to take unnecessary damage. Now, I highlight issues like this, as well as things like freezing and crashing and so forth, because it is very relevant to how Kabam operates. And I want to be very blunt here. Kabam is not a responsible company. They are not a transparent company. They do not care about their player base or their customers. And by the way, we are all their customers. This is how a business works. We are all potential customers to spend money, which of course is Kabam's ultimate goal. Kabam's communication is also horrendous and pathetic the vast majority of the time. And you need to be very aware of that if you're going to decide to invest a lot of your free time into playing a game like this. And so I want to talk about their communication, how they choose to communicate, particularly related to Discord and their customer service. Now, here's the thing. If you play this game, you're going to want to be on their Discord server. It is their primary vehicle for communicating updates and so forth. They used to have the forums, but they shut those down. I will say that Discord is a ghost town compared to even a year ago because a lot of people became incredibly frustrated with it for a lot of reasons. But it is the one sort of mechanism we have to connect with other players and get updates on the game. And unfortunately, Kabam has a long history of communicating as little as they possibly can, of avoiding their players, ignoring their players, and even blaming their players for the issues that players have, as well as a long history of censorship. And I want to give you one primary example of this. This is a message that was sent by Pinwheel last May, nearly a year ago. And this was in response to a massive flurry of gameplay issues that accelerated, got much worse for many players after the release of version 8.5. And in the early months of 2021, literally hundreds of players, both via Discord and via customer support, were begging Kabam for information because things like freezing and crashing, disconnections, all that stuff just got significantly worse. And for months, we were given virtually no information, despite the fact that these were widespread, broad-based issues affecting almost everyone. And finally, Pinwheel came onto the scene with this message. Now, I do want to say, I have nothing against Pinwheel personally. I think of all of the mods on Discord, he is the one that actually seems to care and try. Most of the other mods are entirely silent, but Kabam is simply a messenger. He's not in management, he's not a developer. Kabam is simply relaying information from his superiors. And so, what is the crux of this message? Well, Pinwheel says that since the release of 8.5, around the same time, Unity, which was the programming software they used to develop the game, had also been given updates, and they believed that it was the updates to Unity that were causing this incredible acceleration of gameplay issues for players, particularly those playing on older devices. And he goes on to say that a lot of these issues were therefore outside of their control. Now, that's fine. You can accept that or not. It's up to you. But it is, of course, a bit of a deflection. Kabam has a long history of this. They tend to avoid responsibility. They blame other people. They do not take responsibility. They are also a very whiny company. They complain a lot. They don't like to be criticized, so forth and so on. But regardless of whatever you feel about Kabam choosing to blame Unity for a lot of these issues, I want to highlight one sentence here, which was incredibly revealing of how Kabam chooses to conduct their business. This is in the second to last paragraph where Pinwheel says, "We will continue to look into what things we can do to improve the game's performance. However, we will not be providing status updates in this channel along the way. Any changes will be communicated via announcements, blah, blah, blah." Now, that sentence hit me like a ton of bricks. I thought it was astounding. And to be very blunt, it was fucking pathetic for them to do this. Because what they were saying was that they were explicitly not only not going to tell us if, when, or how any of these issues would be getting fixed, or even if they could be fixed, they were also explicitly stating they would not be giving us any progress or status updates along the way, even though these were incredibly broad-based issues that had been affecting thousands of players for months. This was just utterly ludicrous. I almost gave up on the game at this point. Eventually, I did decide to stay, of course, but this was a really, really serious abdication of responsibility. And here's the thing. Imagine any other kind of business taking this approach. You could use any number of hypothetical examples, but let's just say you were having problems with your cell phone carrier. You were having technical issues, you couldn't connect to the internet, you couldn't make calls, your phone was crashing, freezing, etc., etc. you're complaining. Thousands of customers are complaining. And for months, your cell phone provider is ignoring you, not giving updates, being very vague in anything they say. And then finally coming onto the scene and saying, oh, well, all these issues you're having with your cell phone performance are not our fault. They have to do with some other software or hardware. And by the way, we're not even going to tell you if or when any of these issues will be fixed. We're not going to give you any updates along the way. Now, if a company acted like that, what would happen? The vast majority of their customers would leave. They would take their business elsewhere for good reason. Now, this is a game, that's true, okay? This is not a utility, it's not a government service, it's not something that's going to affect your life in a serious, tangible way, but that's not the point. Kabam is a business. They are in business to make money. They do that, first of all, through our time and our attention. They do that through getting us to watch ads, which are a very important part of their revenue. And they do it through giving us endless deals to spend real money so that they can make money and be profitable. This is how a business works. And none of these behaviors, like I'm pointing out here, are indicative of a responsible or transparent company. The only thing this relays is that they do not care at all about the needs of their customers. And the thing is, I would be the first to admit that some issues are very difficult to fix. They say this all the time. I'm not a developer, but I know a lot of developers. Yes, some performance issues are very difficult to fix, and sometimes they cannot be fixed. That's fine, but they're choosing to deliberately not communicate with their player base, with their customers, with their fans is utterly pathetic. And the thing is that this is just one of many examples I could give you of how they choose to communicate, or rather how they choose not to communicate. And I also want to highlight one other thing here in their rules section. So their rules are a pretty standard terms of service. Okay, I'm not a lawyer, but I have worked in the corporate world the vast majority of my life. I have worked for major legal and financial institutions, doing marketing, market research, technical writing, and so forth. I know contracts very well. This is pretty generic. However, I want to point out Rule 2, be constructive, because this is actually very indicative of Kabam's philosophy. It says, off-topic messages, spamming, repeatedly posting the same message, or reposting a message that has been deleted is not allowed. If a message is deleted, it is done so because it breaks one of these rules, so the moderator's decision is final. Now, this is actually very clever and crafty on their part for two reasons. The one is that the word constructive is open, legally and otherwise, to a very broad array of interpretations. You can interpret the word constructive in any way that you want. And so what that means is that if you post something on Discord that they deem not to be constructive, even if it's very well written and honest and true, they can very easily just delete it and say, well, that wasn't constructive. Further to that, Kabam has chosen, and by the way, all of these things are choices. They could change their behavior at any time, but they choose to use the word constructive in a way that is synonymous with critical, because Kabam hates criticism, and they have a long history of censorship. And so if you post something that could be construed as critical or negative, they will also, more often than not, delete the message. Sometimes they warn players, and they have a long history of even banning players from Discord for posting messages that they feel are quote-unquote not constructive, which of course is nonsense. It's cowardice. It's a cop-out. Now, I will admit, there are certainly some players who, when they go on forums or sites like Discord, they're angry and they rant and they swear and they just act like assholes. And you shouldn't do that. If you have a problem, no matter how upset you are, if you're going to go on Discord or email customer service, be calm, be clear, have no emotion in your message, and be specific. That will help you. With that said, I personally know players who have been banned or warned repeatedly simply for posting constructive criticism, but because it wasn't praise of Kabam, Kabam didn't like it. This really angers me. I think it's really awful and pathetic, but this is what they choose to do. And I also want to mention the fact that they do say that their moderators' decisions are final. There is no appeals process of any kind. Now, to a degree, I understand that. It would take a lot of resources and time to have that. But again, it's a cop-out. It is a very easy way for them to say, well, these decisions are final, and so we're going to choose what's on our server. That's it. nothing else. And unfortunately, there's nothing you can do about it. Now, I will tell you that one thing that Kabam does seem to forget is that they do not own this server. They are renting space from Discord, and they are obligated to abide by Discord's policies. So if you had a problem, you could actually go to the source. They are renting space from Discord. This is not their property online. They forget that all the time. With that said, obviously complaining to Discord might not do anything, but it is something that's important to bear in mind. The lesson here is that Kabam tends to censor. They hate criticism. They avoid giving out more information than they absolutely have to, and they get upset and even angry when players vent their frustrations, no matter how valid they are. And you have to be mindful of this if you're going to play the game and if you're going to communicate with them. And so I want to do a couple of things here. I want to talk a little bit about their customer service, which is related, because if you have any sort of tech issue or anything like that, they are going to tell you to contact their support. I will say, I have been in business for a long time. I have probably never seen a customer service department that is more ridiculous and pathetic than Kabam's. It's one of the worst I have ever seen, and I have seen some awful service in my day. It's a joke. A couple of things tend to happen when you email their customer service. Number one, they will often refer to you as Summoner, which of course is the name for MCOC players. A lot of their agents, their customer service agents, don't even seem to know that this game exists. But more importantly, they very commonly will reply to you using form messages, meaning templates that are quite literally copied and pasted from other messages. They do this all the time. And that is really, really sad and just does not inspire even the slightest bit of confidence. It has happened to me, for sure. I could show messages. I have shown them messages where I get one reply, I compare it to the previous reply, and it is literally word for word identical, even if you're talking about something that is completely unrelated to the previous ticket. And so unless the issue you have with them is extremely easy to fix, the vast majority of the time, you're going to get a form template copied and pasted response. They will ask you a lot of questions and follow up, which is fine. I don't mind giving them the model of my phone and all of that stuff. But at the end of the day, most of the time, the final response you will get will be very similar to that message I just showed you from Pinwheel. It will say something like, "Thank you for bringing this to our attention. We're going to look into it, but we can't guarantee when or if it will be fixed. And we're not going to be able to update you along the way. And if we do fix it, you'll see it in announcements in Discord." So in other words, you will not actually get any personalized support unless it's, like I said, it is an unbelievably easy issue to fix. Anything broad-based, anything technical, they are not going to give you their time. And so for that reason, I know a lot of people who simply refuse to contact their customer support ever again because they think it's a laughingstock, which it is. And so again, you have to be mindful of that. Now, there's a couple more things that I want to address here. The first has to do with purchases. So in-game purchases for money. Now, it is not my job to tell you to spend money or not. And here's the thing. I'm generally in favor of supporting a game financially if you love the game. But for me personally, there are a few reasons why I do not spend money anymore at all. I did spend a little bit when I started, and I don't regret that. But I refuse to give them money now for a couple of reasons. Well, the first, of course, is the fact that they have a long history of screwing up their purchases and not issuing refunds. There are times where you make a purchase, this has happened to me, where you are double charged or you're charged for something that you didn't buy or something like that. If you go to Kabam's customer service, they will stonewall you. They will do everything they can not to refund you, in which case you have to go to the Apple Store or Google Play in order to air your grievances. That is very unfortunate and just deplorable behavior on their part. But more importantly, if you're going to make purchases for a game like this, you want to feel sure that the game is in good health in terms of its tech issues, its performance, as well as in terms of content, which is the other thing that I want to cover here. I'm not going to spend money on a game that has tech issues that, like I said, have lasted for years without even the simplest explanation of whether any of these issues are going to be fixed or can be fixed. More importantly, we have no idea what's actually coming for this game. Now, to their credit, They did finally give us a roadmap a few months ago, right, where they outlined the new bots, which turned out to be Skywarp and Ironhide, and they did announce some changes that would be coming. Now, it is freaking ridiculous to me that they didn't do this years ago, okay, but I give them credit for doing it now. Unfortunately, though, a lot of the roadmap is still extremely vague. Now, I understand they can't tell us the launch date of every little thing, but take the new content in general that comes to this game. Well, for the most part, over the last several years, it has been confined to time slides, which are very repetitive. They tend to put the same mods, the same bots. It's the same thing over and over again. Raiding is incredibly stale and repetitive. Away missions are basically the same. Arenas have had a little bit of modification, but for the most part, they are the same over and over again. There has been no further acts added to the story missions. There have been no further LOC missions. And of course, we have had the exact same AM map for the past 2 full years. Now, they did say that they would be giving us a new AM map and that they want to be able to change it more often. They said they want to add new arenas and new special missions. I do applaud them for doing that, but again, we don't know. Is the new AM map going to come in 2 weeks or 6 months? We have no idea. And because of the complete lack of content for several years, a lot of players are very skeptical and suspicious for good reason. And so I don't want to be spending money, which, by the way, a lot of their deals are pretty expensive, $50, $100 for a lot of their deals. I'm not going to spend that kind of money for a game that might be shut down in 3 months. Because you have to remember, Kabam is not a successful company by and large. MCOC is a phenomenally successful game. One of the most successful mobile games for some time now. They really hit the jackpot with that game. Good for them. But they have a long list of failures and poor performing games, like TFTF, like Realm of Champions that was just shut down, like their Star Wars game, right? A lot of their games have done poorly. And TFTF is certainly not a high revenue game. And so again, if I'm going to spend money, I want to feel confident in the company that I'm investing in and in the health and performance of the game. Kabam has given us very little on that front, and so I'm not going to give them my money. I will watch their ads and I will give them my time, but I won't give them money because I don't feel like they're deserving of it at all. And if I look, for example, they just released G1 Ironhide. I would love to get him. If Kabam operated responsibly, and like they actually cared, I would spend $100 on him. But I can't do it because I have no confidence in Kabam as a company, and many, many other people do not as well. And so one final thing I do just want to mention very quickly, I want to point out, this is a screenshot of a boycott that was organized by players in late 2018, 3.5 years ago. This was featured by Night Skies. Synthwave also did a video on this. And I want to just bring this boycott up because this was done in response to a whole host of issues that were happening in the game back in 2018. And the reason I'm highlighting this is because the issues that they mention, if you were to read this entire document, they are virtually identical to many of the same issues that exist in the game now. They were talking about the lack of communication, the lack of new content, endless tech issues, bugs, glitches, and so forth, punishing of players, issues with purchases and getting refunds, so forth and so on. The issues are identical, and we're talking 3.5 years later. We're at the 5-year mark. And the things that the players were talking about back in 2018, the endless list of issues that caused a lot of players to leave the game or to at least refuse spending money, are still occurring today. And the thing is, when you're dealing with any company, just like when you're dealing with people, you have to look at their actions much more than their words. And Kabam's actions are, at the very least, incredibly negligent, incompetent, careless, and frankly, arrogant and disrespectful of their player base. And so I just wanted to highlight all of that. That if you're going to play this game for a long time, you're going to have issues with gameplay, tech issues, communication issues, censorship on Discord, pathetic and incompetent customer service, issues with in-game purchases, a significant lack of new content that may be improving, let's see, but maybe not. You have to be aware of all of that. And for most players, you simply reach a point in this game where you either reach a point of acceptance or rejection. And if it's the latter, if it's rejection, then you throw your hands up in the air and you give up because you say it's not worth my time, they don't respect me, they don't care about us, so I'm done. And that has been true of a lot of players, believe me. But if you reach a point of acceptance, which is what I have done, you just have to learn to live with all of these issues all of the time, and just hope that maybe they will one day eventually change their ways. Because at the end of the day, I'm not making this video out of anger at all. I'm in complete acceptance. I mean, this is what I expect from them. And the thing is, I want this game to do well. I really do. I love this game. It's a fantastic game in so many ways. Despite all of its issues, I keep playing because I love the game. I love Transformers. I've invested a lot in it, and I've made a lot of friends. I know a lot of great people who play this game. But I have been unbelievably disappointed in Kabam as a company. I give huge props to their designers and their engineers and their animators. They know how to make a fighting game. But their management, their customer service, their operations people, their marketing people are a joke, and they are incredibly disrespectful and arrogant. And for that reason, all I can do personally is hope that one day that they improve before the game dies. Whether that happens or not, I have no idea, but that's all that I can do. And so I'm certainly not going to tell you what to do, but I do want you to be aware, just very soberly, as honestly as I can tell you, that this is how Kabam operates. This is what happens in this game if you're going to be invested in it over the long haul. And so you have to choose, like I said, to either accept it or reject it, and then make decisions accordingly. So I hope this has been helpful. Do let me know if you have any questions, and we will talk again soon. Take care.